If Pedro burns down Juan's house and Juan claims from his insurance, will Juan also be able to claim for damages from Pedro? We're going to answer that question and explain subrogation and contribution today. What's up? You're watching Tito Talks non-life insurance discussions once again with me, your favorite Tito Miguel, who loves to make non-life insurance discussions easier to understand for both agents and clients. Magandang Wednesday po sa ating lahat. Thank you so much for tuning in to this last of the three-part series of our discussion of the insurance principles. Now, as you well note, let's do a quick recap. We have gone through insurable interest, utmost good faith, indemnity, and proximate cause. So that just leaves us with the last two, subrogation and contribution. Now, the reason why I put these two last is not because they're of least importance in the six. All of them are equally important, but mainly because these last two, subrogation and contribution, they stem directly from another principle, which is known as the principle of indemnity, which we talked about last week. Now, to answer the question that we had in the intro, wherein if Pedro, who is the liable party for the damages to Juan's house, is liable for the damages, and Juan can claim from his insurance, which the insurance pays for, can Juan also claim for damages from Pedro, who is, in all senses of the word, the liable party? Now, the primary answer to that question is no, because of the principle of subrogation. But in order to appreciate fully how subrogation operates and the other applications of subrogation, it's best to take a look into what subrogation means specifically. Now, subrogation is clearly defined as taking the place of someone else who is entitled to certain rights and privileges and claiming these rights and privileges and claims in the stead or in the place of that other person, of the latter. To be more specific, subrogation refers to someone else taking advantages, taking claims, taking payments, taking for damages in the place of someone else. In short, kumbaga, instead of Juan claiming for damages from Pedro, someone else takes the place of Juan and asks for reparations and asks for payment from Pedro for the damages he inflicted to Juan's house. Who is that party? You may be asking. It is no other than the insurance company who paid for Juan's house in the first place. And this is only possible if the insurance takes care of that claim. Now, as we all note on a deeper scale, insurance is known as the transfer of risk from the client to the insurance company, which means when losses comes, instead of the client accepting the blunt end of the losses, that loss is spread out towards the resources of the insurance company, making it so that it's not that painful for the insured when a loss incurs. But risk isn't the only thing that is transferred whenever a claim is made. Once the insurer once the insurer indemnifies Juan for his house, there is a transfer of the risk. We absorb the risk, we absorb the loss that Juan sustained when his house burned down because we'll be paying for Juan's house. But the loss isn't the only thing that transfers. What also transfers is Juan's right to claim for damages against Pedro, which means once Juan takes care of his insurance claim and he gets the payout from his insurance claim, he can no longer ask for Pedro to pay for his damages. That is something the insurance company does. And yes, we do. If you ask any other insurance company, or if you take a look at their organizational structure, you'll notice that they have they usually have departments solely dedicated to the recovery of losses. As you will note, insurances are businesses at the very core. So if we in turn receive a loss, we have to pay for the loss because of our contractual obligations in the policies. We expend efforts into trying to mitigate these losses by asking for payments from the actual liable party. In this case, that's Pedro. Meaning, once we pay off Juan's house, Juan's damages, the right to run after Pedro for damages transfers from Juan to the insurance company. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the insurance company will come after Pedro for the damages in an effort to reduce or in order to recover our losses. The same thing happens in multi-car collisions, wherein one insurance company covers one car that bumps into another car, that crashes into another car. The insurance companies of these vehicles, or the insurance companies that cover these vehicles, will ask for reparations, will ask for recovery from each and every one of them, depending on the sources of liability. It's a very bloody, very tedious, and very stressful process. Thankfully, you agents or agents don't have to bother themselves with that. Your main concern is what your client needs in terms of reparation, in terms of liability. Once you're capable of taking care of that, once your client has been paid for or has been indemnified, you no longer have to worry about what the insurance company does with the subrogated right to run after the liable parties. Next off, finally, finishing off the discussion, we're going to talk about the principle of contribution. Now, the principle of contribution sounds like taxes, sounds like a regular fee you have to pay, but not necessarily. The principle of contribution is mostly found in co-insurance, or it is the reason why we have something known as co-insurance, wherein multiple insurers insure the same property against the same types of perils. Now, the principle of contribution dictates that if ever that is the case, wherein more than one insurer or several insurers insure the same property from the same perils, each insurer is only liable for losses based on the rateable proportion of their coverage of the loss itself, of the property. Let me say that again. Each insurer is only liable for a rateable proportion equal to their coverage of the property. What does this mean in simpler terms? Let me give you an example so that it's easier to explain. Let's say you have a property that's worth 10 million pesos. Let's say it's a large building. A building that's worth 10 million pesos. Now, in most cases, especially for these types of very, very expensive properties, in most cases, more than one insurer is required, or more than one insurer is invited to cover the property. Now, each of this insurer is supposed to cover a rateable proportion of the full property. They are not allowed to cover the same amount of the property. Neither are they allowed to cover the whole property's value simultaneously. Hindi po pwedeng 10 million ang coverage ng isang insurer, 10 million din po ang coverage ng kabilang insurer. That will result in something known as double indemnity, which goes against the principle of indemnity, or double insurance, which goes against the principle of indemnity. Again, hindi pwedeng pagkakitaan ang policy. Therefore, double insurance is not allowed. Instead, what both insurers do is that they share the 10 million value of the property, which is sometimes dictated by the insured. They can determine how much each insurer will cover. Let's say one insurer will cover 5 million, and then Tito will cover another 5 million. It could be 70-30, could be 80-20, could be 40-60, depending on the needs of the client. Having said that, the same thing can be applied kapag may loss. Meaning, if the loss or if the property goes through a total loss, meaning 10 million buo ang nawala, the insurance companies are only liable for their own rateable proportion of the contract. Meaning, kung 10 million ang nawala, 5M ang coverage ng isa, 5M ang sagot nung kabila. Or, again, 70-30, 80-20, 40-60, depending on the deal, depending on how the policy turned out. Now, I mentioned earlier that these two principles are closely connected with the principle of indemnity. In the case of subrogation, Juan is not allowed to profit by claiming from his insurance and claiming from Pedro. That would mean he would get he would get double the amount of indemnity because two people paid for his damages, the insurance and the Pedro. At the same end, for contribution, you cannot have multiple insurers insuring the same property for the same coverage. They have to share because if multiple insurers covered the same full amount, then the customer would end up with two claims of the same amount for the same property. 10 million ang property, 10 million dalawang coverages, claiming for two claims of 10 million. Profit yun. And of course, that is not allowed. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Let's prepare for our question for the next topic this coming Friday. Now, this Friday's topic is going to be very interesting as well, and this question is supposed to prepare you for this, and this one's really interesting. If your insurance policy dictates that your house is green, but you painted it in the middle of the year, and now you have a red house which burns down, but you did not tell your insurance provider, will you still be covered? Your insurance policy shows a green house, but your house is now red, which has burned down. There is a discrepancy. What's the insurance company going to do? Are they going to deny the claim? Are they going to honor the claim? Are they going to void the policy? What do you think is going to happen? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. So once again, I hope to see you this coming Friday. This is your Tito Miguel, always saying, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.